Well, good day, my friends. It's your old pal Jordan the Lion. How are you all doing today? Well, I'm doing great. And today we are going to cruise our way through North Carolina. Daze with Jordan the Lion begins right now. All right, we're about 10 minutes outside of Smithfield, Grabtown. Right here you can see that we have entered Smithfield, and what's kind of strange is they have a sign right here letting you know that someone famous is from this area, but it's not the person we're here to see. Hometown of Barry Foote, Major League Baseball player and coach. We're here to see Ava Gardner, actress. Well, our first stop today is going to be at Sunset Memorial Park and the grave of Miss Ava Gardner. She's in her family plot here. And right there is a sign showing you where she's at. How to find her here. I wish every cemetery that had someone famous would do that. So we have another sign right here, and one here on the ground that says 100 feet. So we'll follow along here. And there's a Gardner right there, but that's not the right one. You want this one right over here, right where it turns, where you can see a lot of flowers here. And here are her parents, so we know we're at the right one. Her father, Jonas, he was a farmer. And then her beloved mother, Molly, who died the day after Ava divorced Mickey Rooney. And then you can see there's some other family members over here, Inez and William. But Ava is right over here where the star is. Ava Lavinia. That is definitely her headstone right there. She was born and raised out here, and her father's barn caught on fire and it prevented him from continuing farming, so her mother started to run a boarding house for teachers, and she would cook all the meals. And so while she was doing that, Ava would be out running around. She was the youngest of all the kids. She would be out running around the yard and running around the property barefoot, just loving life, enjoying life. And then her mother lost her job. The boarding house closed down, so she got offered another boarding house that she could go and take care of, which was in Virginia. So at the age of 13, Ava went to move with her mom to Virginia City. And her mom used to go to the movies, and her mom loved Clark Gable, and Ava eventually started loving Clark Gable as well, but she didn't want to be an actress. So she grew up for about 2 years in Virginia, and apparently a little bit more of a refined community, and when she came back she wasn't speaking like a southerner anymore, and she was very beautiful, and she had been a tomboy before she left, and when she came back she was now this beautiful woman that everyone wanted to go on a date with at the age of 15. And so what ended up happening was she continued on in school and then decided to become a secretary. And once she graduated from high school, she was taking a break, or had a break, at the secretarial school that she was going to. And her sister had moved out to New York City, so she went to visit her sister. And her sister was married to a photographer who thought Ava was so beautiful that he asked if he could take her picture, and took a photo of her with like a Vivian Leigh style hat from Gone with the Wind. And Ava was a big fan of Vivian Leigh, so he took that photo, and he didn't tell her, but when she went back to North Carolina, he put it in the window of his photography studio. And right down the street was a movie theater, and it was one of the Lowe's theaters, and a man who worked for Lowe's came by, saw it, and wanted to go on a date with her. So he went in and said he was a talent scout and that he wanted her phone number so he could pass her information along. They said they wouldn't give him the phone number, but he ended up passing her information along to MGM anyway, and without Ava knowing it, MGM became interested in her and then called her and said they wanted her to come do a screen test, and she didn't even really want to. She just wanted to be a secretary, meet a guy, have a family. That was pretty much all she wanted, and she begrudgingly went and did the screen test. She had a southern accent again by that point, and she wasn't an actress. They said even on the notes that she couldn't talk, she couldn't sing, couldn't dance, nothing, but that she was likable, and they gave her a contract at MGM anyway. And within 5 months of her moving out there with her older sister who was living in New York, they moved to Hollywood together. Ava was engaged to Mickey Rooney, who she would marry, then 16 months or 18 months later divorce. And like I said, her mother, Molly, would die the next day. Then Ava would end up getting some meaningful parts in movies and ended up falling in love with Artie Shaw, the band leader. Married him. That didn't work out. She dated Howard Hughes, and that was a total catastrophe because he used to get infuriated with her and hit her and beat her and everything, and then she would beat him up back. She ended up throwing a paperweight at him and split his lip and knocked out some of his teeth. Then eventually she fell in love with Frank Sinatra at Frank's lowest, when he had apparently been cheating on his wife over the years, but he was considered himself a good Catholic and didn't want to get a divorce. But he loved Ava so much that he ended up doing that, and when he did that, he lost most of his money. So her success in movies was keeping them afloat, and she was doing well while he had to accept pretty much any movie that would come his way to make money. And so while she was off filming the movie Magambo with Clark Gable, her hero, she ended up getting pregnant by Frank, and it was a really bad time, so she had an abortion in London and never ended up getting to have kids. And then Frank wanted to be in From Here to Eternity, and when he left her side from filming Magambo, he went back, did a screen test from Here to Eternity, got the movie, and then won the Oscar for the movie when she was also nominated, and she didn't win, and she said his entire personality changed. So she ended up eventually moving to Madrid, hanging out with Ernest Hemingway, making movies of Ernest Hemingway's work, and then eventually ended up coming back to North Carolina, and then would fly out and do Knots Landing, but eventually, sadly, passed away in 1990 from a throat disease, like throat cancer disease. So when Ava passed away, the largest flower arrangement that showed up that day was from Frank Sinatra. It said, "With love, Francis," and that's because when she was dating him and he was still married, they had a code. If she wanted to call him, she would tell her assistant, "Call Dr. Francis when we get to the hotel," and Dr. Francis was always Frank. And they often say that that was the true love of her life as well. So now we're gonna head off to the Ava Gardner Museum because I want to tell you the story about how that happened. A man that actually went to school with Ava Gardner, thought she was so beautiful, went to that college that she went for secretarial studies. He saw her there, and the next year when she didn't come back, he overheard that she had got a contract in Hollywood. And from that moment on, he saw every movie that she had ever done. He started collecting every bit of memorabilia he could find, clippings out of newspapers, everything. And eventually, he and his wife bought her childhood home, turned it into the Ava Gardner Museum, and then when they were getting sick, they put it in their will that they wanted the museum to continue on, and so he donated his entire collection, and it's all on display here in the theater where Ava used to go see the Clark Gable movies with her mom. And I called this area Grabtown because that's what it was called back then. It wasn't an official city name, but just everybody called it Grabtown. And whenever people would ask her where she was from, she'd say she was from Grabtown, North Carolina. You can see right over here on the sign, the historic downtown, they have an Ava Gardner Museum. Museum's about 3 minutes right down the road from her burial place. All right, buddy, you're going to the hotel while I go in the Ava Gardner Museum. Is that cool with you? Great. You've been a great companion, John, for this trip. As usual. Well, here it is, the Ava Gardner Museum. This is going to be a good one. They have quite a bit of stuff in here. Looks like a lot of her wardrobe is in here. Beautiful lady. They said one of the things that she grew up on was that her mom believed in 3 square meals a day, so when the studio tried to tell her to limit what she was eating and everything, she said, no, I'm not going to do that. And they said she ate 3 square full meals a day and never gained a pound. Let's go check this out. All right, here we go. Although no one believes me, I have always been a country girl and still have a country girl's values. And here she is as a little girl. And here you can see the family birthing record. And down at the very bottom is her name. She was born when her mother was 39. See, right there, 1923. And if you look at the top, it shows family members that were born during the Civil War. And there's the printing plate from her high school graduation announcements. And she went to Atlantic Christian to be a secretary, and here's the yearbook from that, with her featured. There's her diploma. Wow. Now here we have her costume from the Barefoot Contessa, which I talked about. That's when Frank couldn't really get much work, so he was going on location with her and kind of being a stage husband, screen husband. Very cool to see her wardrobe. Actually, she was filming this when he went back and received his Oscar. And here's the back of the Barefoot Contessa costume. And that's the picture I told you about out of the gravesite. That's the one that her brother-in-law, her sister Bappy's husband, took that photo and put it in the window of his store. And there's the bombshell, the beauty. And they actually wanted to change her eyebrows and she refused. Now it says that jewelry is what she wore in the movie Pandora. 3-piece silver wire set. Ava also wore this matching set to the wrap party for the film in November of 1950. During the party, Ava gave the set to Matilda Cupp, wife of production coordinator Otto Cupp. And it says that Ava used to use envelopes and small boxes to store her mementos from different film projects, and this was the one from Pandora that she put her stuff in. Simply listed as me. And then I mentioned that Ava moved to Madrid. She developed a love of bullfighting, and he was even dating a bullfighter, and that's what she used to like to talk to Ernest Hemingway about. And this is a copy of the book that was signed by the author for Ava's sister Bappy, by Mario Cabré. And he wrote this book inspired by Ava. And there's a lot about Pandora in here, Pandora and the Flying Dutchman, because that was really what changed her career. You can see all the different promotional items for it. She said that of all the films that she made, that one was probably the one that ranks as the most obscure, yet almost nothing she had done before or since had much of an effect on her. Said, and it wouldn't be an exaggeration saying that it changed her life forever, because Pandora got me outside the United States for the first time and introduced me to 2 countries, England and Spain, where I was to spend much of the rest of my life. 1 trip abroad, honey, and I almost never looked back. And of course everyone loved Ava.
Everyone that pretty much met her wanted to be in a relationship with her except for Clark Gable. She said she made 2 movies with him. One was Magambo, which was a remake of Red Dust, and that was the first movie that she saw him in with her mother. So that was a big deal for her to be in that. And she said that they were just like brother and sister, but Frank and Howard Hughes and George C. Scott, Artie Shaw, Mickey Rooney, they all fell in love with her. And every one of them she would turn down multiple times and they'd keep coming back. But eventually Frank did leave his wife and, like I said, gave up a lot of his earnings up to that point to be with Ava. So check out this dress. There's a story behind it. It's called the Howard Hughes dress. So it says that during World War II, silk was extremely hard to come by and very expensive. It was used in the manufacturing of parachutes. In numerous attempts to win Ava's love and hand in marriage, Howard Hughes showered her with gifts in addition to jewelry, vacations, and other lavish gifts, including a German Shepherd. Hughes gave Ava silk for this dress. All his gifts could not buy Ava's affection, although she remained friends with him for 20 years. And yeah, every time she was in a relationship with someone and it ended, he was said to have had private eyes, like private detectives watching her all the time. And as soon as she broke up or was divorced, he knew and would always come back into the picture. There she is wearing that dress, actually. So it says the dress was made by Hollywood costume designer Howard Greer, who started his career with Paramount and went independent in 1927. Greer designed for Hollywood stars such as Katharine Hepburn, Ingrid Bergman, and Rita Hayworth. He was dubbed the designer to the stars. So here on the left you can see her in The Killers, which was an Ernest Hemingway movie, and that's kind of why her relationship with Artie Shaw didn't work out. He was a pretty intellectual guy and was always trying to get her to read intellectual books like Hemingway, and she wasn't interested at the time. So The Killers was big, and then this was the first movie she made with Clark Gable, The Hucksters. And then of course she was in Magambo, right here. And that one they went to Africa to film. And of course she was also in Night of the Iguana, which is right here, with Richard Burton. And there she is with Richard Burton, 1964 Night of the Iguana. And then here she has some figurines on display. And it says that these figurines, while filming Pandora and the Flying Dutchman on location in Spain, Ava won the hearts of Tos de Mar residents with her down-to-earth charm. She also fell in love with the country of Spain, so much so that she moved to Madrid a few years after filming. It was during her residence in Spain that her friendship with Ernest Hemingway flourished, regularly attending bullfights with the famous author and catching the eye of famous matadors. Those were in her house. Then that is a little lady's bracelet watch. And it says that it was from America's premier jewelry merchant Tiffany & Company. It was a gift from director John Ford, who directed Magambo. And it's 17 jeweled mechanical wind-up movement. On the back it says, they have a picture of the back, which I think they really should have displayed the back instead, but it says, "To Ava, a class act, John Ford." I'll take a look at that. That's her Magambo safari jacket with Clark Gable. That's so cool. This was, it said it was one of her goals. She achieved her acting breakthrough 1953, and he cast with John Ford, so he cast her in Magambo, which was a remake of the movie that she liked when she was a kid. That's that jacket right here. And this was another one of her big hits, was her performance in Showboat. Now here they have a couple of her dresses. This is from the Cassandra Crossing, and they actually have a picture of her down here wearing that dress in the movie. Look all the way to the left. She's standing right there next to Martin Sheen on the left wearing that dress. And then this one's Ride Vaquero costume, or dress from that. And then over here we have her Great Sinner jacket. Fur trim jacket was originally designed by Irene Lenz for the use of gaslight in 1944, which it was worn by Ingrid Bergman. Ava Gardner then wore it in the Great Sinner. Irene constructed it from a vintage 19th century wool shawl. Very cool. And then this wasn't a costume at all. This was just Ava's personal wardrobe. How cool. She was ready to be on Laugh-In. I love it. It's like kind of Laugh-In, kind of Jimi Hendrix. Very cool. Says one of the Fontana sisters' best clients was Ava Gardner. They designed pieces both for her private and professional wardrobes. Gardner wore Fontana for her film roles in The Barefoot Contessa and The Sun Also Rises and On the Beach. And then in here they have some various gifts. So the castanets here were given from Ava Gardner to her niece Ava. And if she was going to get her castanet, she had to get her a flamenco dress, of course, because that was another thing that Ava loved about Spain. You can see up here, Ava and her flamenco. And then that is a demo record. It says Frank records a demo for Ava called You're My Thrill. And it says, while their romance was still young in 1949, Frank recorded this song. Popular song was composed by Jay Gorney, lyrics by Sidney Clare, and was released in the 50s by Billie Holiday and also by Doris Day. And then that is Frank Sinatra's watch and jewelry box that he gave to Ava's nephew. Very nice. Gave it to her nephew Billy Grimes. Now down this hallway they have various things from her homes. And this is from her London apartment that she would live in, I believe, when she was in her late 60s. You can see some of the things from her drawing room, including a picture of the drawing room, but you can see here one of her clutch bags, some of her glasses. Her cigarette case, letter opener, a pillow made for her by her nephew or niece. Probably niece, because it says, an aunt is someone special all your whole life through, and there's a spot within my heart reserved just for you. At the very bottom it says Aunt Ava. And then you can see her monogram on the little passport booklet. Ava Lavinia Gardner, and her keys, and some of her gloves. And that was her London apartment. You can actually see the sconces up there on the walls are here. And some lions. And then over here we have some of her dining room china from the London apartment. She loved collecting china. And they said one thing about her was that she worked to live, not the other way around. She just worked to be able to go out and enjoy life. Then here's Ava's headpiece that she wore in her own personal life, and she also wore it for Look magazine. You can see her wearing it right there behind it. And then there's her dress from the Great Sinner. I can actually show you a wonderful picture of her wearing it. Another Irene Lenz dress that she made, and she was in The Great Sinner with Gregory Peck. Was the first of the 3 movies that she made with him. And here's her wearing that dress. Now here's her Gucci collection. She apparently loved Gucci and Dior. There's her hat. And it says in here, Gucci evening clutches, leather pocketbooks. Gucci was founded by Guccio Gucci in Florence in 1921. By the end of the 20th century, the Gucci company had become one of the world's most successful manufacturers. And there, look at that purse. She's holding that purse in that photo right there. And that hat is the same hat that she's wearing up here in this. And here we have a case of Ava's jewelry. You can see this is a charm that Howard Hughes gave her on display in here. Gold chatelaine perfume bottle bracelet charm. In the early 1950s, Hughes gave this to her. Ava wore the charm on a bracelet, and it can be seen in the photo when Ava visited Hawaii with Frank Sinatra. Yikes. Well, holy cow. Gave her a gift and she wore it with Frank. And look at that beautiful necklace. Then here are some of her earrings and various other brooches and things. And that purse has a mirror inside of it. Now here we have a couple of costume dresses. That one it says is from Showboat, the musical. He was the same guy who designed this. It was Walter Plunkett. He designed a lot of the Gone with the Wind costumes, which she was a huge fan of. She loved Gone with the Wind. And then over here is a costume from My Forbidden Past. And these were designed by RKO designer Michael Wolff. And he's the same guy that did the Star is Born costumes and everything. Then over here is our last batch of clothing, I believe. This is from 1985's AD, which I never saw. It's biblical. She was also in the Bible. That's when she was dating George C. Scott, and apparently he was pretty mean to her, from what everybody says. And then the next one, the yellow one, is from 1986's Harem. Then next we have from The Long Hot Summer, her dress from that, 1985. And then the one on the end was one of her dresses from Knots Landing, and apparently they wanted to make her part bigger, but she was living in London and she said that she missed her dogs too much, so she didn't want a bigger part. Gotta love it. This is commemorating one of her visits home, and you can see her having a meal with her family. And you can also see her sitting on her childhood front porch. Now up here in this picture, that is from, you can see everyone from Ava there to Richard Burton, Elizabeth Taylor. Even Elizabeth Taylor at one time said Ava Gardner was the most beautiful woman in the world. But here they're all receiving guns. They had received gold-plated guns given to the cast from director John Huston. And so they actually have hers here on display. There's Ava, Richard Burton, and Liz smoking cigarettes together, hanging out. And then this is really cool. This is her San Sebastian award that she won. And it kind of comes in this whole case type thing. Very interesting. And here we even have a certificate from the United States Army for her public service. Well, if you're coming through this way, Smithfield, you have to stop here. This is an absolutely amazing museum. And what an amazing drawing of Ava from a fan. And we'll go ahead and get a few things out of the gift shop too to help support. And Tom's the one I mentioned early on in the video as to how all this memorabilia kind of came about in the original museum. So I think I'll get that poster and a handful of postcards for Patreons. And since I've been to Madrid and seen the pictures of Ava at the restaurant her and Ernest Hemingway used to hang out in together, I'm gonna get this sangria.
Well, my friends, we're gonna call it a day from Smithfield, North Carolina, the home of Ava Gardner. You don't want to miss this museum. If you're in town, if you're passing through, if you're anywhere close, come visit her gravesite, pay your respects, and come visit this amazing museum. We're gonna call it a day. Have a great night, and goodbye.